just I've got some really racial responses, and just dropping the M-bomb, monkey, all this other stuff. And if I bring up race in the sport, then people, oh, here he goes, he's race baiting. Oh, he's blowing out the black card, blowing out the race card again. But, I mean, the screenshot after screenshot is just some of the most brutal fans ever. But, as I said once before, I know who I am. I can look in the mirror, and nothing that anyone has ever said to me has stopped me from being a champion, stopped me from making it to the top. And if it was going to stop me, it would have stopped me so long ago, I would have never made it to this point. I grew up in Ferguson, and everybody told me I wouldn't make it, I wouldn't do anything. My teachers told me in school that basically, hey, man, if you want to do anything in your life, you need to pull yourself together. And they were just brutally honest with me. I mean, I said it time and time again, Stevie Wonderboy was just forced to eat his words. He was the one that said, I prefer to fight Robbie. He's been more active, title face in later fights. He's been waiting around for a title shot. He said that, and I just made him eat his words. I wasn't giving him my moment. I went out there and I achieved greatness, and it was like 20 minutes of me being a champion. And you think I'm going to sit up here and, give you my, my glory? You got nothing coming, brother.
I'll give you a couple of examples. One, they never end, okay? So George could be 170, and his rights still be owned by UFC. That doesn't exist in any other sport anymore. It did, but it hasn't in 30 years. Another example is all of the licensing rights that are involved are owned by UFC, and the ability for a fighter to do separate licensing is extremely limited, which is unlike in other sports, which you obviously know that major stars in basketball or hockey or baseball or football have. These are just two most obvious examples. And when you go through parse through the different parts of the contract, it's extremely restrictive as to what fighters can and cannot do. And it's just unlike any other sport at this stage, not even boxing.
Dana White has said in multiple interviews, and I know part of that is just, promoter talk and whatnot, but he has said that he doesn't believe that GSP wants to fight. I think GSP has laid it out pretty clearly that he wants to fight. And they're claiming he has a contract. He's claiming that they're in breach, and the contract has, pretty much been null and void. So if they think he doesn't want to fight and there's no use for him, why don't you just let him go? Why don't you just let him go, test the market, get a deal, and fight? Now, of course, we all know that they don't want him to go sign with Bellator or anyone else because he is a hot commodity. I think if, let's say, a Bellator signed GSP, I think he can go to the Bell Center in Montreal, the Air Canada Center in Toronto, and fill up that place, sell it out in minutes. He's that big of a star, and I think people, based on how they're reacting to this story, still very much care about him. He said something interesting, that the new owners told him that they'd have to spend a lot of money reintroducing him to the public upon his return, and I think that's crazy. I mean, he last fought 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. People still remember who arguably the greatest of all time is. And I truly feel for the Canadian fans, because right now I think that 206 card is a little thin. I also feel for DC, who gets pay-per-view points and would definitely, stand to gain a lot from GSP being on the card. So, aspect of GSP, I mean, if you recall, back in the day, showing up to press conferences wearing a suit was an anomaly, and he was one of the first to do that. He would show up to these pre-fight press conferences wearing a suit while everyone else was wearing, flip-flops and Affliction T-shirts. So he was really a pioneer in that.
He got made fun of for doing that. Yeah, got made fun of for doing that. I remember back then. I remember Brandon Vera saying, "What are we dressing up for these for all of a sudden when I wore a suit?"
Yeah, it's great. And now look at everyone wearing these nice suits, which I think is great for the sport, by the way. So yes, to answer your question, I mean, I think the UFC pulled out all the stops for UFC 200. I don't know in this day and age if the new owners, after paying $4 billion, are breaking the bank to get a Brock Lesnar for essentially one night only. A lot changed after that, and GSP said in that interview with me yesterday on the MMA Hour that, with Lorenzo, he was at the goal line, and they had a deal, and then the new owners come in, and they say that deal is no longer in play, and we're going to talk about a new deal. What's interesting to me is Chris Weidman told me last week that in order to get his deal done for 205 and beyond, his new contract, he had to go to Las Vegas and meet with Lorenzo Fertitta Fertitta kind of served as this mediator, which is kind of mind-blowing in the sense that he just sold the company. Why is he still involved in deals? But if that happened, and we know he still has a very good relationship with Dana White, why couldn't the same be done with GSP? That's another weird aspect to all of this. And like I said, I mean, the UFC, from what I'm told, laying off around 60 to 80 employees today. There's a reason for that. You talk about cost cutting and the duplicate jobs and things like that. So yeah, anyone who thought that WME-IMG was going to pay $4 billion, keep it all the same, and just kind of go on their merry way, you were fooling yourselves. A, they want to try to bring more revenue in. They're going to try to do things strategically to start getting in the black. And B, they have a lot of their own people that they want to put in. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of business acquisitions, as you know.